Wood chips had always been my go-to mulch. They were easy to source, looked tidy, and promised long-term soil protection. But over time, something became obvious. The beds mulched with wood chips stayed intact, yet they felt stagnant. Water sat on the surface longer than it should. Soil life was slower to rebound in spring, and certain areas compacted despite all that organic matter. What finally replaced wood chips in my garden wasn't another bagged product or imported mulch. It was living mulch, and once it took hold, it made every other mulch feel incomplete. Why traditional mulches eventually hit a ceiling. Wood chips, straw, and bark all perform the same basic job. They shade soil, reduce evaporation, and slowly break down. The problem is that they are passive. Once applied, they sit there. They don't respond to weather, they don't repair damage, and they don't adjust nutrient flow. In beds where soil biology is already struggling, passive mulch can actually slow recovery by limiting air exchange and delaying microbial activation. What living mulch actually is in practical terms. Living mulch isn't a single plant or product. It's a low-growing, soil-covering plant system that performs mulching functions while actively building soil. These plants grow, shed organic matter, fix nitrogen, and interact with soil microbes every day. Instead of covering soil, they become part of it. Once established, they outperformed every mulch I had used before. The moment wood chips lost their advantage, the shift became obvious during a dry stretch. Beds covered in wood chips stayed dry underneath despite irrigation. Beds with living mulch remained evenly moist with less water. Roots could breathe. Worms stayed near the surface. Soil temperature stayed stable. That was the moment I realized mulch doesn't just need to cover soil, it needs to participate in it. The plants that quietly replaced everything else, low-growing clovers, creeping thyme, and self-seeding herbs became the backbone of this system. These plants spread gently without smothering crops. Their roots loosen soil naturally and their leaves shade the surface, just as effectively as wood chips. When trimmed, they drop fresh organic matter directly where microbes want it most. How living mulch feeds soil without stealing nutrients. A common fear is competition. In reality, most living mulches share nutrients rather than steal them. Clover fixes atmospheric nitrogen. Thyme releases aromatic compounds that deter pests while feeding microbes. As roots grow and die back, they leave behind channels that improve aeration and water movement. The soil becomes layered, not compacted. Why decomposition speeds up instead of slowing down? Wood chips rely on fungi to break down, which takes time. Living mulch feeds bacteria and fungi simultaneously through root exudates. These sugars leak into soil constantly, keeping microbial populations active year-round. Decomposition happens in real time rather than waiting for material to rot. So, here's the thing. This approach really changed weed pressure for good. You see, weeds absolutely thrive in bare soil and in disturbed mulch layers, but living mulch, well, it occupies that space all the time. Seeds just struggle to germinate. And those that do manage, they're weak and honestly really easy to pull out. Over time, the weed seed bank just collapses, since there's never a chance for it to build back up. Water management, I have to say, improved far more than I ever expected. Living mulch actually regulates moisture better than any static layer I've used. When there's heavy rain, the roots soak up the excess water and keep runoff at bay. And during drought, the shaded soil just doesn't lose moisture as quickly. I noticed irrigation needs dropped, quite a lot actually, across the whole garden once living mulch took the place of wood chips. There are seasonal benefits here that passive mulch just, well, can't match. In spring, living mulch wakes up right alongside the soil, gently warming it instead of keeping it insulated for too long. Come summer, it cools the beds naturally. In autumn, the leaves drop and feed the soil straight away. And in winter, The roots keep protecting the soil structure underground, even when the top growth slows right down. So, how do you transition to living mulch without, disturbing your garden? Well, replacing wood chips doesn't actually require stripping your beds bare. You can just plant small sections at a time, which is honestly much easier. Simply thin the chips a bit, then seed your living mulch and let it establish. Over several months, the system sort of replaces itself naturally. This way, the garden adjusts without any real shock. The long-term result? Well, it's something no bagged mulch can offer. Over time, the soil becomes darker, softer, and much more resilient. Plant health improves, and you don't need to keep adding extra feed. Pest pressure declines, and honestly, the amount of maintenance drops as well. Instead of always adding mulch, the garden pretty much maintains itself. So, why does this approach feel so different? And, living mulch really does change the way you interact with your garden. The beds just feel alive, and the soil responds quickly to whatever you do. Problems, they seem to sort themselves out faster. It's less about constantly managing inputs and more about, guiding natural systems. The biggest lesson this whole process taught me is pretty simple. Mulch shouldn't just protect the soil, it should actually build it up continuously. Once I truly got that, wood chips became a temporary tool, not a permanent solution. Living mulch didn't just replace wood chips for me, it replaced constant effort with a sense of balance. And once that shift happened, honestly, there was no reason to go back.